So I've missed quite a few shiurim due to our Avelis. Yesterday was the Shlichus, so b'siyata d'shmaya, we hope to be coming back to a normal schedule. So the sugya we will be discussing today is Shemin Shin Chof Ches, is the question of Zechia by Afroshes Challah. I understand that we moved on from there, but so my dear son-in-law asked me to speak about two different sugyas, Tumas Hadeshen and the Broch of Afroshes Challah. We might as well deal with 3 or 4 or 5 different sugyas. So we'll try, and we'll see how this year progresses. But primarily I want to discuss a question in which the Gedolei Hazman have discussed extensively, and that is the validity of Mashgichei Kashrus that are mafresh Tumas HaMaises and Challah. And some Gedolim argued or just brought up a question, a shliach that was nominated, that was appointed to be a shliach, could he do any chalois b'davar shel Rabbi Yolam, any ma'isa that was impossible to do when he was nominated as a shliach, could he perform? So let's start off with the famous Tumas Hadeshen and Siman Kuf Peiches. So the Tumas Hadeshen was asked about a maid, a meshareses b'bayis. So the balas habayis prepared a dough to bake bread or anything else that's chayav b'challah, and she left the house, and she's not coming home on time, and the isa, if it's not put immediately into the oven, will be spoiled. Does the meshareses have the authority to be mafresh challah? Because lachatchila tzorach lafresh challah menu isa. It is only b'di'eved sheyochel hafresh challah min hapas. So, is she authorized to be mafresh challah? L'cha'oira, one could argue and develop a discussion in a totally different angle, which Kimdumani Tumas Hadeshen doesn't really discuss. So l'chatchila tzorach lahafresh challah min ha'isa v'lo min hapas. But when a shliach is mafresh challah, is the mishaleach b'chlal considered the one who performs the mitzvah? If it's not a direct shlichus, only zechia, it would go without saying that it would not be his mitzvah. We have a very chashuv guest in the shiur today, who just walked in, Reb Chaim Molinsky from Teaneck, New Jersey, and wherever I'm welcome, he's welcome. We always go together. So the Mishareses takes, I almost said the Mishareses takes it for granted. The Tumas Hadeshen takes it for granted. That l'chatchila tzorach hafresh challah min ha'isa v'lo min hapas. So that is not an option to be mafresh challah min hapas when the balas habayis comes home, because l'chatchila tzorach hafresh min ha'isa. But I would argue this mitzvah belongs to the balas habayis. And the balas habayis, if the mishareses is mafresh min ha'isa, loses the mitzvah entirely. Because my opinion is, and my Talmidim know this because we discussed it many times, so the 4 or 5 or 6 of you who are my Talmidim Muvakim know that in my opinion, if you make a shliach to perform a mitzvah, the shliach gets the entire schar mitzvah and the mishalech gets nothing. The shliach is considered the one that is makayim the mitzvah. All the Mishalech has is Yotzi Yadei Chavosai is not considered a Mevatel Mitzvah Sasei, but the Shliach gets all the Sechar. Even if someone would not accept my opinion, and almost no one does accept my opinion, because it's against most of the Gedolei Achronim. But when we're dealing with Zechia Zochen L'Yodam Shaloi B'Fonav, I think everybody would agree that Ploini Shezochen B'Shvilo, he definitely doesn't get Schar Mitzvah. He wasn't aware b'chlal that this mitzvah is being done, is being performed. So Zochar Yodam Shalai B'Fonav would definitely only give validity to the Etzem HaMaisa. It would be a proper chalois, but he wouldn't get any sechar. So I would say that the Meshareses has to put the dough into the oven without a frushes challah, because from the point of view of the Balas Abayis, if she's mafresh challah and a pas, at least she has a mitzvah. If the Meshareses is mafresh challah and a wissa, she loses out entirely. So Mehechet Teisa, the Meshareses should be makayim the mitzvah lechatchela on the expense of the Balas Abayis that loses the mitzvah entirely. So my psak would be the Meshareses should put that dough into the oven without any of Rosh Hashanah, and the Balas Abayis will come home. At least she'll have the mitzvah of Rosh Hashanah. Does anybody say that? You learned the sugya. No. The Tzois argues that the Meshareses cannot be mafresh challah, and therefore, in order not to lose the pas, put it into the oven. I argue, even if the Meshareses could be mafresh challah, she has no right to be mafresh challah. She has no right to take away the mitzvah of the Balas Abayis.
So it answers their chance. If you could be mafresh challah, what's the? Why do you have to come up?
I think the Tzois brings that up as an additional argument. The Ikar Tain of the Tzois is there is no din of Zochar Yodam Shalai B'Fonav. So the Meshareses cannot be mafresh. And then the Tzois says, so if she puts it into the oven, then the Balas Abayis will be mafresh later. I argue, even if the Meshareses could be mafresh later, why would we let her do so?
Chazanish says mitzvah ketikuna.
Mitzvah ketikuna mitzad mi.
That's surah of Rosh Hashanah supposed to be.
Okay. I understand what the Chazanish would argue, but I would say, what right does the Meshareses have to take away the mitzvah of the Balas Abayis? It's not, this mitzvah is not upon the Meshareses, it's upon the Balas Abayis. So,
is this taken away from schir, or even the schir? They're saying even if there has schir.
I argue, even if we say there is schir, but me'echet it's not your mitzvah. What right do you have to take away the mitzvah of the Balas Abayis? What?
If you have Rosh Hashanah, it doesn't matter. So it's not.
Whether it's a matter or it's not a matter, it is a mitzvah. In a way, it's a mitzvah. And we say berach is a mitzvah. So she's taking away the bracha, and she's taking away the mitzvah. Me'echet. But this is not what I want to develop, because I really want to speak about the Tumas Hadeshen and about the question I raised before.
Is the Rav saying that it wouldn't be considered a schus because it's dealing with mitzvah?
I don't even want to go to that extent. One could argue it, and therefore would be considered a schus. But I would say even if it would be considered a schus, we don't have the right to do so. To be mikapech. I would say if the Meshareses was mafresh challah, she has to pay a solas ahuvim to the Balas Abayis. She took away her mitzvah. So one could argue, therefore, it's no longer a schus, and it wouldn't. But even if we assume that the Meshareses has the authority to be mafresh challah, it's a goin of mitzvah. The mitzvah belongs to the Balas Abayis. And if she's mafresh menapas, she's mekayim the mitzvah. So it's not a lechatchila, but she's mekayim the mitzvah. So I wonder why the Ktsois HaChoshen and the Merkavas HaMishnah and the Tumas Hadeshen and all the poskim deal with one aspect, and nobody says what to me seems a pashtus. I mean, even if the Meshareses could be mafresh challah, why would we take away the mitzvah of the Balas Abayis? It's her mitzvah.
The Iker mitzvah is on the Balabais, the Ish. The Balabais, the Ish.
So,
Isha, who's just being mafresh to Rusavais, is also the of the Baal.
I don't want to go into protein. So, maybe there is no Ish. Maybe she's a Grusha or an Almona or a Pnuya. I'm not going into that. Afrosh Challah is a mitzvah of the Noshim, and that is the minig. So, no matter how we define her, it's not a mitzvah de pshita that a isha is mafresh mitzvah shlichus. She has a degree of bilis, food that's in the house. So, when I argue a fundamental point, I don't like to be distracted by details. what I'm arguing is a gewaltige Taina in Lomdes. I think even if a Mishareses could be Mafresh Challah, Mehechetesa, I think if a Mishareses is Mafresh Challah and the Challah is valid, she has to pay a Sola Zehuvim to the Balas Abayis. She took away her mitzvah. But let's get back to the Tumas Hadeshin. So the Tumas Hadeshin says, Zochen la'odem shaloi befonav. And therefore the Balas Abayis definitely doesn't want to lose this dough. It should be spoiled. So the Mishareses has the right to be Mafresh Challah and it's Chal. The Ramon Sheikh of Chesiv Gimel paskins in accordance to the Tumas Hadeshin. K'tzois HaChoishin, Reish Mem Gimel Siv Kot Neches, argues that Tumas Hadeshin is not right. And his basic argument, I think, was somewhat misinterpreted by many Achronim. So, many quote the K'tzois, and the K'tzois argues, Zochen le'odam shaloi b'fanav, ein zochen me'odam shaloi b'fanav. Schia would only apply when we're zoicha for a person, but when we take away anything and we take it out of the possession of the bailim, schia just wouldn't work. Doesn't apply, taking away from the bailim, and therefore, when we're mafresh challah, we actually take part of the issa, and we're mafresh challah, it becomes trum, it becomes a moment of shevet. So even though it is nichel la bailim, the K'tzos argument is nichusa, is not defined as schus, and zochen liyodam is not about nichusa. It's about zochen liyodam, and therefore wouldn't apply. And the K'tzos bases his argument on Tosfos and the Rashba in the Dorm Daf Lamed Vav. So the Gemara in the Dorm Lamed Vav has an aboye. Hamafresh mishalo el chashel chaveri tzorach datoi ein tzorach datoi. When a person is mafresh from his own peiros, on peiros chaveri, tzorach datoi olo. Tosfos and the Rashba both explain on the spot in the Dorm Daf Lamed Vav. Why is the Sofek only mafresh mishalo el shel chaveri, not mafresh mishal chaveri al shel chaveri? So both Tosfos and the Rashba explain, a mafresh mishal chaveri al shel chaveri, definitely that's not a schus. Even if we could assume nichalei, person made a shliach to be mafresh to misamaisis, another person heard, or rather overheard, and he was mafresh. No, doesn't work. Because a mafresh mishal chaveroi al shel chaveroi, that is not the schus. That is not zochin. Only mafresh mishal shel chaveroi. So the understanding of the K'tzos, b'biyah divrei Tosfos v'Rashba, it's not a technicality. This is nichalei and that's not nichalei. It's a fundamental yesod. Begeder zochan la'odam shaloi b'fanav. It is only when the person she'anu zochem loy has monetary gain. If it's monetary loss, even if the circumstances are such, we're convinced the nichalei, but there is no monetary gain, zochem wouldn't apply. Now, the K'tzos doesn't mean zochen la'odam v'loy me'odam, because a mafresh mishaloi al shel chaveroi, he is not zoicha lechaveroi. The truma that he is mafresh doesn't go lechaveroi, it goes directly to shevet hakahuna. So the K'tzos argument is, schus is monetary gain. That is the exact hagdora. Monetary gain. When I am mafresh for my peiros, al shel chaveroi, he gained. He gained that he is not required to take part of his own peiros and give them as truma. He gained because my peiros are truma, and the entirety of his peiros are mutar b'achila. So there is no kinyan. I'm not doing a kinyan for him, but he has an indirect monetary gain, because in normal circumstances he would need to take part of his peiros and give them to a kohen, mafresh truma. He's getting away with my peiros, and zochen would apply. So the K'tzos doesn't go so far to the extent to argue zochen is only when I'm kohen for him, but I can't be kohen from him. No. Hamafresh mishaloi al shel chaveroi, I'm not kohen for him, but I am giving him an indirect monetary gain. Because normally he would have to give away part of his payers to a Kohen and a Levi, 10%. That's a lot, more than 10%. Chutachas Bateres is a Kriya, and another 10% that he has to give to the Levi. And so he has an indirect monetary gain. And the Ksoi says that would be a proper Schia, but not one a mafresh from his payers. The Hagdora Zochen La'odam V'loi Ma'odam is the Markeves HaMishnah. He was a contemporary of the Ktsois. But that's a Markeves HaMishnah, Perigvov Megerishin. One generation later, Rabbi HaRav, Shalas HaShuvas, Emek Yehoshua, Simen Chof Aleph. They both have this argument, Zochen La'odam V'loi Me'odam. The Ktsois, that's not his point. The Ktsois says, Ktsois differentiates between Zochen and Nichuso. Nichuso is not enough. So one of the sources that the Tumas Hadeshim brings to prove his point is the end of Yavamis. Amazake get leishtoi b'mokim yavim. Do we say Zochen liodom or we don't say Zochen liodom? When a person gives a get, there is no schia, because we assume it's not a schus. Shtar shichrur, schia would apply, but not a get. But b'mokim yavim, and usually women don't like their brothers-in-law. Maybe, I don't know. So, Amazake get lishta b'mokim yavim. The Gemara is mesupik whether we say zochen. So the Ksoi says because he's zochen the get, but the woman has no need in the etzem get. Why would that be zochen? So the Ksoi says because we're zochen for him. There is no monetary gain. This argument would be more reasonable dafka according to the Markeves Mishnah and the Emek Yehoshua, because according to them, it's Zochen is Kinyan. If there is no Kinyan, there is no Zochen. The Tzais formulates his argument differently. Monetary gain. A get is not considered monetary gain. The get, Kozvai al Isure Hanoah Kosher. You could write a get on Isure Hanoah. You could write a get on nothing, something that's worth Pochas Meshova Pruta. So there is no monetary gain. Anyway, that is the opinion of the Ktsois. I myself, I think the Pshat and Tosfos and the Rashba is totally different, and it's not Soisa the Tumas Hadeshin at all. To argue Zochen Riyodam Shaloi Befonov, it is not enough to have a coincidental Nichusa. So if a person made a Shaliach, be mafresh from my payers, and somebody overheard, and he is mafresh, no. That is a coincidental nichuso. It needs to be anan sahadi, delekuli almen nichalei. It needs to be a universal schus, and that is exactly the boya dolayivshita by a mezake get lishta b'mokim yovim. It's a boya dolayivshita, because most of the times it would be considered a schus, some of the times it would not be considered a schus. The Tumas Hadeshin says, to prevent the dough from getting spoiled is a milsa de pshita. Every balabayas would prefer that it's taken care of. If a woman makes a dough, she doesn't want to throw it out, and that would be a consensus across the board. It's chus, and therefore it would haru. I don't think that Ashba and the Tosfos would argue against that. But let's go back to the basic question. The Ramah paskins in accordance to the Tumas Hadeshin. The Ktsois is choilik. And this brings us to the question I just indicated at the beginning of today's shir, and now I want to explain what the dilemma is. Soite daf Yud Beis. Soite daf Yud Beis, we have a sugya. Person made a shliach l'kadosh la'isha. Whom do you want? Do you have a name, an address? No. Nozi daf Yud Beis Amud Aleph. He's a big tzaddik. He says, I don't understand anything about Noshim. I don't know exactly what I want. Get me a good wife. Tall, short, color, hair, black, white, what? I don't know. Get me a good wife. You're more maven than I am. I trust your judgment. Today that would be a very strange proposition, but maybe in the world of yore was acceptable. So a person made a shliach l'kadosh l'yisho. Shloach goes out on his way, he never came back. Also, he can't get married because any woman he would want to be Makadosh, maybe it's a Choisishtoi, maybe it's Kalosoi, Chamoisoi, maybe it's an Ereva, so he can't get married. So the Gemara says, but he could get married to a woman who her relatives were either unborn at the time or they were an Eishesish at the time. So he definitely couldn't be Mekadosh her sister. Her only living close relative, next of kin, is a sister. And at the time of the Shlichus, she was an Eishesish, or she wasn't born yet. So he could be Mekadosh her sister. Why? Because a person can't make a shliach. Kol milsa de'i loy motza oved hashta loy mashve shliach. If you make a shliach to perform something, Kiddushin for instance, if that isha wasn't available, and the shliach could not be mekadosh that isha, at the exact time he was appointed as a shliach, then shlichus wouldn't apply. Even though that isha got a get a day later. And now she is up for Kiddushin. But at the time the Shliach was appointed, she was an Eishes Ish. And therefore he has no authority, he cannot be Mekadosh that Isha. Shatois is on the spot, Yud Beis Omid Aleph and Nozia, asks, so how could we make a Shliach to prepare bread and be Mafresh Challah? So Toysa says, Biyodai. Biyodai is not considered a Dover Shabbat Yodam. And then Toysa argues, no, if it's Mechusa Maisa, it's not considered Biyodai. It's not considered Biyodai. Toysa proves that a person cannot be Mafresh Truma, Meperis, that were not yet plucked off the tree. That's a Dover Shabbat Yodam. Is Biyodai to pluck them off the tree, or to cut the Tvua, but it's Mechusa Maisa, still is considered a Dover Shabbat Yodam. So Toysa leaves it B'tzorachiyun. How could you make a shliach to be mafresh challah before the dough was prepared? Tosfos leaves it b'tzorachim. But Tosfos does assume that any shliach that was appointed as a shliach cannot perform what he was not able to perform at the time he was appointed as a shliach. So Rabbeinu HaRav Elyoshev and many other Gedolim, present-day Gedolim, or the previous Gedolim, deal with the question, when this Mashgiach was appointed as a Mashgiach 10 years ago or 20 years ago, these Peiros were non-existent. So how could he be Mafresh Challah here and now if the Peiros and the dough and the Kemach and whatever it is was totally non-existent when he was appointed as a Shliach? So I think there are many reasons to rely on Hafroshes Trumas and Maisas and Challah of a Mashgiach Kashas, even though he was appointed 100 years ago. Number one is the Trumas Adesha. There are more paskins in accordance to the Trumas Adesha, but the Mechaber brings the Trumas Adesha and B'S Yosef, he doesn't bring him in Shulchan Aruch. And B'S Yosef, he doesn't bring anybody that's choylek on the Trumas Adesha. Would seem from the B'S Yosef, Alocha Kamoise, he doesn't bring him in Shulchan Aruch. And this brings us to a very fundamental question we find many times in Dalat Chalka Shulchan Aruch. How do we relate to a situation, to a phenomenon, in which the B'S Yosef brings a shitta in B'S Yosef, he doesn't bring him in Shulchan Aruch? And this touches an even more fundamental question. So, Rabbeinu Yosef Karo, who was Gadol Shebigdolim, and almost all the Gedolim in his generation bow down their heads with total submission to the godless of the B'S Yosef. Not all of them, but most of them. And he wrote two magnificent Sforim, the B'S Yosef and the Shulchan Aruch, which is Ikar and which is Tafel. What was his intention? Obviously, the B'S Yosef was sensitive to the attacks that we find in Shuvas HaRosh and other Rishonim against the Rambam. So the Rambam gave us the Mishnah Torah, and in Shuvas HaRosh he wonders, why didn't you share with us how you reached these conclusions? You expect us to accept your psukim like Moshe Mepi Agavura, and why would you think so? Aren't we entitled to know how you reach these psukim, and what is the background, what is the underlying pilpul. So why do you expect us to accept your psukim without sharing with us how did you get here? So the Beis Yosef did share with us, and that is the Beis Yosef. So some Gedolim feel that the Ikar Sefer Halacha is the Shulchan Aruch, and the Beis Yosef is just intended for the Rosh, and others like the Rosh. Those Gedolim who feel they have the authority to dispute and to check and to examine and maybe reach different conclusions. But the basic Sefer Halacha is the Shulchan Aruch. And that's why it's called the Shulchan Aruch. This is the Shulchan She'olav Yoshvim Kol Beis Yisrael Malacha Mohem Oichlin Umememav Hem Shoisim. Others, like Reb Shmuel Vital, say no, the Shulchan Aruch was merely for Chazorah. But the fundamental Sefer from which we are supposed to paskin is the Beis Yosef. The first edition of the Shulchan Aruch that came out in the lifetime of the Shulchan Aruch, it was divided into 30 days. And the kavanah of the Beis Yosef was that every Jew, every month, should go to Dalat Chalke Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch was printed 3 times during the lifetime of the Beis Yosef. And in the other 2 times, we do not find that. I think somebody tapped him on the shoulder and told him, what's wrong with you? Totally unrealistic. You know, many of us finish Tillim once a month. That's a reasonable proposition, going through Tillim once a month. But Dalat Chalke Shulchan Aruch once a month. Well, so I think it was brought back to sensibility, the Beis Yosef, and to reality. And in the other editions, during his lifetime, we do no longer find that Chalukah. So this is an argument between Gedolei Sfarad as the Shulchan Aruch came out. Which of the 2 Sforim is the more basic one, the Psak Halacha? I think most of the Gedolim throughout the ages accepted the Shulchan Aruch as Zeh HaShulchan Asher Lefnei Hashem. And the Beis Yosef is more the background. If you do want to check out my psukim here, everything is transparent. Go through the halachas. This is how I reach these conclusions. So, how do we relate to those sources in which, in Beis Yosef there seems to be a psak, but we do not find the Shulchan Aruch. The Chidon Shas to Beis Yosef, that's the most important source dealing with this dilemma. So the Chidon says there are 3 possibilities. 3 possibilities. Why did the Beis Yosef omit these halachas from the Shulchan Aruch? Possibility number 1, if it's a milsa de lo shchicha. The Beis Yosef was very, very concerned that the Shulchan Aruch should be as short and as brief as possible, especially if his initial kavanah was that we should go chazaret every 30 days. So if it's a milsa de lo shchicha, he did want to make his opinion clear on Beis Yosef, but he skipped it in Shulchan Aruch. Possibility number 2, if this is a halacha that we could learn from another source in Shulchan Aruch. So if he could learn this very same halacha from a different source, then he didn't want to bring the same halacha twice. If these 2 possibilities are not reasonable, then we must conclude that he decided that this is not halacha psuka, ve'ein halacha kamoisa, even though it doesn't seem so in the Beis Yosef, because the Shulchan Aruch is the more decisive of the 2 Sforim, and maybe after he wrote the Beis Yosef, he decided that this is not halacha psuka. In our case, I think possibilities number 1 and number 2 are very reasonable. Possibility number 1, after all, the Tumas Hadeshin deals with the halacha that doesn't come up every day. Usually, if a person prepares a dough, or a woman prepares a dough, she's mafresh challah. She doesn't leave the house after preparing the dough before Rosh Challah, and then she comes back late. It's a ma'aseh shehoyo. It's not something that would come up every day. So it's a Beis Yosef, but not in Shulchan Aruch. Possibility number 2. In Hilchos Trumas, Shin Lamed Aleph Sif Lamed Aleph, the Mechaber paskins, if a person was mafresh truma meperes chaveiroi, and he was not authorized to do so, and later the Balbais comes home And he says, somebody tampered with my peiros. And I said, yes, I was mafresh tumas amaises. And he said, klachitz el yofis. Why didn't you go? I have peiros of a better quality. Why didn't you take those? Then trumosoy trumo. The Taz wonders. Because in Bo Mitzvah Beis, the Gemara says, B'shav Yeshliach. But the Shulchan Aruch follows in the footsteps of the Rambam. The Rambam brings this halacha below Shav Yeshliach. Rabbi Kiva Eger explains, Zochen liyodam shaloi b'fonav. And the Gemara in Bo Mitzvah Beis is not halacha psuka. So we could learn from this halacha that regarding a Froshes Truma, Schia does apply. And that is the entire Chiddush of the Trumas Hadesha. So we could learn this very same halacha, not in Shin Chof Ches, but Shin Lamed Aleph. It's not that far away. Truma and Challah are the same. So I think the fact that the Shulchan Aruch doesn't bring the Trumas Hadesha doesn't prove it's not halacha psuka. Both possibility number 1 and number 2 do apply. And because in Beis Yosef it does seem that he paskins the Tumas Hadeshen, so in my opinion, both the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramo paskin the Tumas Hadeshen. So we disregard the Ktsois, especially, Lanias Daiti, the question, would Schia apply to a Froshes Challah? Depends entirely, is Schia metam Shlichus or not metam Shlichus? That is the fundamental question. So Rashi and Tosfos, many sources in Shas, say Schia metam Shlichus. The Ramban and Gedolei Svarad, the Ramban Talmida v'Talmida, the Rashbo, the Ritvo, the Ran, say Schia lav metam Shlichus. If Schia metam Shlichus, Poshut, then it applies to Froshes Truma and Challah. Why not? Anything you could do on the Shliach, you could do b'Zechia. And that is why the Tumas Hadeshen is very interesting. When we learn the Tumas Hadeshen b'Makoiroi, the Tumas Hadeshen is madgish, he emphasizes. Well, it's a schus for the Balas Abai, she doesn't want to lose the dough. And Schia metam Shlichus. And therefore the Mishoreses could be mafresh. Why does it need to put in that line, Schia metam Shlichus? Because if Schia lav metam Shlichus, wouldn't work. If Schia lav metam Shlichus, what is it? What is it? The Ramban doesn't say, what is it? He just says, Schia lav metam Shlichus. The Ritvo, Gitnam Nun Beis says beferish. You cannot be mafresh Truma metam Schia. Because Schia lav metam Shlichus. So what is it? Ktsois HaChoshen and Siman Kuf Hey. Nacha Mechilas Koiter Osai Ofer Ve'efer Ani Tachas Kapas Laklav Shel HaKtsois. Aber Kachi Dacha Shel Toile. So the Ktsois in Kuf Hey says, Schia metam Shlichus or Schia metam Yad? No, there's no such a thing, Schia metam Yad. It says, if we would say Schia metam Mitzvahs Matzah. Ma Kesha. I think it's a Plitas Kolmus. In Bo Mitzvah Daf Yud, there's a machloikes whether Chotza Mishim Shlichus as Rabor Chotza Mishim Yad. Chotza Mishim Yad makes sense. The source of Kinyan Chotzer is either Venosam Biyoda, beget, or im hemotza temotza biyodoi bageneva. Chotzer is metam yad. The Rosh explains in Gittin Dafayin Ches, Chotzer is totally similar to yad. A person holds things in his hands. Things that are bigger, he puts into its chotzer. So by chotzer there's a machloikes mishum shlichus isra bai or mishum yod. By Schia metam Yad doesn't make sense. Ma kesher ben Schia liyad. So if Schia is not metam Shlichus, what is it? If Schia is not metam Shlichus, Schia is a din in Teres Kinyonim. Halacha mesuyemes beTeres Kinyonim. Because the source of Zochan Liyod Shaloi Lefonav is Ish Echod Lemata, Ish Echod Lemata. B'chalukas Eretz Yisrael, Yeshua ben Nun used the Goyel and Urim v'Tumim to determine which chelik of Etzesol goes to which shevet, but the internal chalukah betoch hashevet to the base botei av was alidei Nesiim, and it is from here that we learn Zochon L'Odam Shaloi B'Fonav. The Nesiim had the authority to give a chelik for each base av, and this is the source of Zochon. If Schia lav metam Shlichus, it's a din mesuyim b'Teres HaKinyonim, and therefore, When the Merkevus of Mishnah and the Emek Yeshua say, Zochen le'odam v'loi me'odam, I wonder. This depends whether Schiyam etam Shlichus or not. And if the Trumas Edeshem Beferu says Schiyam etam Shlichus, then this argument is totally invalid. Schiyam etam Shlichus, of course we would say Zochen me'odam. Person could make a shliach to give away. Schiyah is the same. If Schiyam etam Shlichus, this argument doesn't make sense at all. Le'odam v'loi me'odam, Shlichus, same as Shlichus. But according to the Ramban, they're right. Because Schiyah is a din in Torah Sakiniyoni. So, first of all, I argue. Halachic Trumas Hadeshen, Halachic Rashi v'Toyses Schiyah etam Shlichus. And both the B'Shoysev and the Ramon Paskin according to Trumas Hadeshen. Lo kedivrei Akzois. That's number one. Tshuvas Marit Chelik Beis Choshe Mishpat Simachov Gimel. Very fundamental tshuva. And he argues against Toyses Bebiu Divrei Agamor Besoita Daf Yud Beis. And he says, of course, a person could make a shliach even b'dova shalei boli yolam. And the kavanah of the Gemara is ein da'ato al dova shalei boli yolam. But if he specifically makes a shliach b'dova shalei boli yolam, it works. That's the shit of the Maharit. Pischei Tshuva Even Ezer Semelamed Hey brings that Rav Achroinim pasken in accordance to the Maharit. And the Shoyle Meishev writes very strongly, Madura Aleph Chelik Beis and Makuf Tezvav, Shlichus is not a chalois. Why wouldn't Shlichus be valid by Dova Shalei Boli Yolam? Why not? Shlichus is not a kinyan. Eino the makna Dova Shalei Boli Yolam. Shlichus is minui. So the Menita argues, Pshat in the Gemara, ein da'ato al Dova Shalei Boli Yolam. So when he made a shliach, Kadosh Li'isho, he doesn't want the shliach to wait till somebody will be born, and then he'll have to wait another 20 years till she grows up. Ein da'ato al eishes ish, doesn't want to wait. So ein da'ato al dova shalei boli yolam. But if a person specifically makes a shliach and he tells him, I want you to cut the tvu and be mafresh to him, of course it works. So when the merit is cholik al toisves tzorach yom, well, but the Pischei Tshuva Even Ezer Lamed Hai says that halachic kedivrei Maharit. The Yeshuas Yankev on the spot there. The Avnei Meluim says, proves that Rashi is against Toises. The Achronim bring Rabbeinu Yerucham shelo kedivrei Toises. So number one, we could rely on Zechiyah. Number two, we could rely on the Marit. Especially Challah b'zman hazeh d'Rabbanan. In Shin Chof Hey, by the Boyed or Yifshit, by Tavel Shein Lo Levas V'zin. Okay, so the Shach explains, it's a Sveike d'Rabbanan. Sveike d'Rabbanan, we go l'kula, so we say there is no tzir of sal. So many achronim pasken in accordance to the Marit shelo kedivrei Toises. A person could make a shliach even b'dova shalei boli yolam. Even if shlichus wouldn't apply, we pasken in accordance to the Maharit zochen liyodam shaloi befonav. Markeves HaMishnah, Perek Vav Megerushin, is Mechadish a big Chiddush. He differentiates between Shliach Bal Peh and Shliach B'Chsav. If you're Mamana Shliach B'Chsav, it's like the Shlichus is Mischadish B'Kol Yoim, as long as the document is B'Fanenu, not like Minui B'Peh, which is Kechaloim Yof, K'Ovek Poleach. If you make a Shliach B'Chsav, it would help, even B'Dov Shel Bol Yoim. HaRav Efrati Yedidi brings in his Sefer, in the name of Rav Elyoshev, that Rav Elyoshev was Soimach, like Abedis Shaila, and the Merkeves HaMishnah. So I argued against the Ktsois today. We live in a strange time. You could argue against the Ktsois, against the Sam Sefer, against the Mishnah Lamelech. Nobody would care. But if you argue against Rav Elyoshev, you're in trouble. I don't think so. I feel much more aim of a yira arguing against the Ktsois than against the Rav Elyoshev. Let me make this very clear. Rav Elyoshev Godol Marav and Shemoi. I had tremendous care for Rav Elyoshev when he was Godol Ador, but Kachidar Kashon Toila. And I think the Merkeves HaMishnah is the schwachste point. Because if there would be a concept of Shlichus B'Chsav, we could say it's different than Shlichus Barpeh, but ain't davar kaze. There is no such thing as Shlichus B'chsav. It's a technicality. There are no two dinim b'shlichus. We don't find anywhere that a person could be mana shliach barpeh and he could be mana shliach b'sav. So if there's no such a thing as a shliach b'sav, why would it make a difference? It's just a technicality. Why would it make a difference? Why would we be machadish that there's a shlichus amischadeshes and a shlichus she'ein amischadeshes? Why would it make a difference? There is no such a thing as shlichus b'sav. It's just a metzius. So I think the Merkevus and Mishnah is a shvacha svara. My first two arguments are far more convincing. Halacha ketrum esedeshen, zochon liyodam shaloi v'fonov, and the Merit and many achroim. After all, Tosfos asks a question. Tosfos assumes, of course, you could make a shliach to prepare a don mafresh challah, and Tosfos leaves it b'tzorechiyah. So I think Tosfos, there's Oidos Baldin, Tosfos says, I can't figure it out, but something is wrong. Tosfos doesn't paskin that you can't. Steht nicht in Tosfos. Tosfos don't. Tosfos say, how could we make a shaliach? Biyadoi. But it's mechus ma'isa. So Tosfos doesn't paskin you can't make a shaliach. Comes along the Marit, and he says, poshut. You could make a shaliach b'davar shalei b'olei yolam. But the Divrei Malkiel, Chelik Dalet Simachov Beis, that's a very yesodistic tshuva dealing with great length about the Mechilas Chometz. And there are many chidushim about Mechilas Chometz. And the Divrei Malkiel asks the very same question about Mechilas Chometz. So people sign a Shtar HaRashor. And many people sign by the Rav on the document authorizing the Rav to sell the Chometz a week or more before Pesach. And then the guy buys Chometz after he signed the Shtar HaRashor. So how could the Rav sell the Chometz that was not in his possession when he signed the Shtar HaRashor? When he made the Rav a Shaliach, that was a Davar Shalei B'olei Yolam. And this is Masam B'chol Yom. But Misharesetz is a Maisa Shahoyo. But this is Kol Oilam Kulo. You sign a Shtar HaRashor by the Rav, and then you buy new Chometz. So how could the Rav sell your Chometz? It's a Davar Shalei B'olei Yolam. So the Divrei Malkiel says that's why you pay the Rav. So he's a poil, not a shliach. Yad poil ki yad barabais. As a Rav, I like this Divrei. Yeah. I think that we should be mefasim that. So if you didn't pay the Rav, then you have a big problem. All your chometz will be chometz shavar all over Pesach. So he says, the Rav is a poil, yad poil ki yad barabais, and that would apply to the Shalei B'olei Yolam. I would very much like to say the Divrei Malkiel is right. But I wrote different sources in my Sefer. Yad Poel Yad Balabais is no different than Shlichus. It's no different than Shlichus. It's Halacha Mesiyemes B'dinei Aveda. If you have a Poel and he finds Avedas, they belong to the Balabais because Yad Poel Yad Balabais. But if Shlichus doesn't apply, Poel is no different than a Shliach. But I think the Divrei Malkiel is right. But another knech, another hadgosh. The zika, the linkage, the relationship between a shliach and a mishaleach is fundamentally different than a poel and a balabayis. Shlichus depends entirely on minui, b'shoshen esmana. Was there a dover abon oilam or not? But the kesher between a poel and a balabayis is not because of 10 years ago they signed the contract. It is because he's getting paid. And if he gets paid, he is obliged, he's a poel. And it's based on the psika. He works, and he works for you. And therefore you need to pay him. So the kesher between poel and balabayis has nothing to do with shas aminui. This is a kesher by its very nature. It's mischadish b'kol yom u'b'chol shom. Until it is annulled. But as long as there is the relationship of a poel and balabayis, this is mischadish b'kol shom. Unlike the Svor of the Makeves HaMishnah Ksav, there's no such a thing as a Shliach B'Ksav, but there is such a thing as a Poyal. That's it then, that's Chiras Poyalim. So the Samchus, the authority of a Poyal, is not because he was hired 20 years ago. It is because right here and now, when he works, the Balabayas needs to pay him. And if the Balabayas pays, he needs to work. And therefore, there is no such a thing as a Davar Shalai Bori Yoylam. Bekivan da Asin Elihochi, I would say even more. Shin Lamed Aleph Sif Lamed Hey in Shulchan Aruch state that Shutfim could be mafresh truma on the chelik of the other Shutf. Why? Shutfis in Lamdis, by its very definition, means that each of us has 50%. The Shutf is not Bailam and 100%. So how could one partner be mafresh on the Peres Shel Chaveroi? Kosav Ashach Siv Kotan Lamed Hey. Probably he's a Shliach. The Shach doesn't mean he was memane him as a Shliach. But that is the relationship between Shutfim. That is the nature of their relationship. So I think even in Shlichus, Lav Davke B'Poyel, there is a concept of an ongoing Shlichus. So a coincidental Shliach, everything depends on the Shas HaMini. I ask you to be mafresh. I ask you to be Mekadosh Isha. No one asks a person, be Mekadosh an issue for me. I want this an ongoing relationship, Whenever you see a good issue, be Mekadosh for me. No, that's insane. We're dealing with a coincidence. He says, please be Mekadosh issue. This Shlichus depends on Shas HaMinui. But Shutfim is different. As long as we're Shutfim, then it is as if I was memane him a shaliach each and every day, each and every moment, as long as our shutfus is intact. The same is with a poil. This is the nature of this shlichus. It's different than a coincidental shaliach. Tzeva kadosh li isha, or please make a dough and be mafresh tumas hamaisis. So there is a shlichus hamischadeshes. We find it by Poyel, and we find it by Shutfim. It's a halacha pshut in Shulchan Aruch and a Rambam. In a Mishnah, in Tumas, that Shutfim could be mafresh one on chelik haveroi. And it's not mehilchas Shutfis. A Shutf doesn't have authority as a Shutf. The Shach explains. If he's a Shutf, then probably he's as good as a Shaliach. So it doesn't depend on Shas HaShutfis when they made the Shutfis. Because as long as they're shutfim, he's a shaliach. As long as he's getting paid, he's a shaliach. And this svara, in my eyes, is a gevaldige svara. I would say it's a milzid pshit. This is what the relationship is all about. He's a mashgiach kashes. And this is what he's getting paid for. Lo yigona mishutaf. So for all these reasons, number one, aloha ketumas hadesh. Number two, aloha kemarit neged ha'toisus. Number three. So I think the Merkeves HaMishnah is the weakest link in this chain. He's mechad Shlichus b'chsav. But I do agree, after we see Shutfim and Poyel, maybe Shlichus b'chsav would also be the same. It depends on the essence of the Shlichus. Is it coincidental? Is it all because he said Tzeva Kadosh Liisha? Or is it an ongoing Shlichus, which that's the mahus, and that is the essence of the Shlichus, B'chiyai Gavna L'niyas Daiti. There is no problem of Dora Shalai Boli.
The fact that it was written shouldn't be Ma'alamoyred, though.
What?
The fact that it was written...
No, that's exactly what I say. It does not depend on Ksav at all. Doesn't depend on the Ksav. So to me, the three asides are, number one, Tumas Hadeshen, number two, the Marit, and I say, Aloha Kedivre Marit. To me, this is an argument, maybe not to everyone, Toises leaves it b'tzorach iyun. If Toises would paskin that you can't make a shaliach, then that would be a psak. But Toises asks a question. Toises doesn't give an explanation.
Shulchan Aruch brings the din of the Rabbeinu Tam, brings that halacha that it could be mamana a shliach for kama, which is forgiven, which is basically the Yisrael brings Toises and it's brought halacha whether that's going.
So that would substantiate my argument. Yes.
Could it be that even though we don't have a problem with Davar Shalom Oilam, we still have to make sure he has das for whatever happens? So the kiddushin. So
Who has das?
We said by Yimakadosh and Mishnah, he still needs das for Shaykh right now. So probably the pratim that will change will be perhaps when Marviach something will be sav. Not for Lo Bal Oilam, that he has das for whatever came.
Who has das?
The Mishaleach.
If he's paying a mashgiach, wouldn't that be enough?
The pratim changed. Different does and different isas and different. Not just Davar Shalom Oilam with the same chetzer.
Why would there be a problem of das if this is his job description and the mashgiach bein hashah? You know, if you're not a mashgiach kashas in a restaurant, but you're a mashgiach kashas regarding mitzvahs atluyas ba'oretz, your ikar job is to be mafresh to masamaisis. If you're in a bakery, this is basic. You need to be mafresh challah. So why would there be a problem of das? If a mashgiach, that's his basic obligation. That's what he's being paid for. You know, he works in a bakery, and he has to be mafresh challah, and if he works with peiros, he has to be mafresh to masamaisis. So. Rani is daiti, I don't see any problem, and I think it's lachatchila. And you know, some rabbanim came up with amazing ideas that he should be a shutuf. Every mashgiach should be made a shutuf. Shutuf in what? In the peiros? Then that really is a kinyan b'dom shel habunyon, and that would exacerbate the problem. If we rely on shutfis, then either we would be a shutuf in the corporation. So I don't think that the board of directors would be so happy to have him on board as a shutuf. Or he needs to make a kinyan every day. No, I think it's poshut and borur that his afrosha is valid for the three different reasons that I explained today. So I'm afraid that the sugya of brochas, Bainish will have to wait for some other opportunity. Be'ez Hashem. So today we discussed we touched upon very important yesodis in Gidrei HaSchiyah, Shlichus, and we spoke about a shayla which many Gedolim, present-day Gedolim, deal with, about the Chalois and the validity of the approach of Mashgichim and Tumas HaMaisis and Challah.
Does the fact that we say in general in Choshen Mishpat that the cashier or the Kupa Rashi is able to be mevater outside the owner gives them a certain samchuyot to give up. So you don't have to come on to this gross chiddush of the Trumas Hadeshan that it's going to be mekalpo. They already have a samchut in order to do a chol for the Baal. They have. Would that add anything? In the Trumas Hadeshan, you don't have to go so far.
Maybe it would add, but first of all, the mere concept is a chiddush, even though I think it's halacha psuka. But one could argue that is only regarding muminis, not regarding Yisav. So regarding muminis, you know, it's like das abalim, you know. But regarding Yisav and the chalois of truma, maybe that would be different because after all, he's not bailim. He's not bailim. So ma'ezed din, he could be mafashim semaisis. He's not an apotropos, and he's not bailim. So even if you say regarding muminis, anan sahadi, that the bailim is not makbid. But regarding the kashos of a Tumas HaMaisis, that would not be enough.